What's up, my good peoples? Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast, where we're talking about ideas that stimulate wholesome thinking into identity, purpose, vision, and action. I am James Anderson, and with me is Logan Eaton, Carolyn Anderson, and my man, Andrew Klingler. What's happening, my good peoples?
Everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, everything.
That's so broad and specific.
Yeah. What's happening with you? I talked way too much last week, so I'm just gonna ask the questions this
So
week.
you're done. You've got all your words out.
Yeah. I think I talked enough about cheese last week for the whole year.
Do you like some good cheese, Andrew? How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. It's a pretty awesome opportunity. So,
Hey, glad to have you, man.
yeah.
How was the day?
Long day.
Yeah?
But it's a good day. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like the trip to Findlay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been into audiobooks recently, so it's been pretty cool to like have some time finally to like be able to listen and listen to some podcasts. You know? Hopefully in the future here I'll start listening to some more podcasts here,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
And what are you doing in Findlay?
Right now, I am working at the cardiac rehab clinic there. So I work Monday through Thursday and get to work with patients who have had heart issues and also lung issues. So it's been really cool to meet a lot of interesting people and kind of learn from the elderly and see like what life looks like, 60, 70 years from now. So hopefully.
Yeah. See a transformation from kind of debilitated to
Rehabilitated?
Yeah, habilitated. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, see a transformation process. So it's really cool.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. So
nice.
yeah.
So with the lung stuff, you just trying to get movements that expand the lung, or?
Yeah, like really to not to nerd out too much, but to really strengthen the diaphragm and like really strengthen like your whole like everything about your like your chest to and practice that deep breathing and kind of just getting them to use most of their lung, like how do I say this? To really try to get the most out of what they have left is really the best way to describe it. Like a lot of them have done a lot of damage to their lungs. So we really say, hey, like, you've done it, but now we can help try to reverse it and try to like, at least get you to optimize the most out of what you have left. Yeah. So, and unfortunately some, that's not a lot. And some, they can get back to pretty close to like all the way healthy again.
Really?
So, yeah.
Wow.
That's really cool.
And most of those lung issues, those are from deep sea diving, or?
Yeah, a lot of divers in Findlay, Ohio. So
Wait, really?
No. You grew
No
up
way.
there. Isn't there an ocean?
I think a couple miles outside of the town.
Quick fact, real quick. In Gilboa, Ohio, which is like 35, 40 minutes away, I used to work at a dive quarry.
A dive quarry?
Yeah, scuba diving quarry. So
Really?
Yeah.
They dug a hole just so you could scuba dive.
Yes.
Wow.
It's like 90 feet deep or something. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there's a quarry in Findlay, but I didn't know
Yep.
there was an actual diving.
Yep, it was a diving
quarry.
quarry. Yep. I worked there in high school and I hated every minute of it. So.
Did you actually
Sorry,
have
I'm
to,
just being real.
did you have to train people to dive or like?
No, I just filled their tanks and just like helped them sign paperwork and cleaned up. I was a high schooler, like just cleaned up and just did whatever the owner
Summer
said.
job,
Yeah, summer job. Yeah.
Did you get a dive?
I never wanted to.
Never wanted to.
I don't want to go too dark or anything, but I saw like 3 people die there.
Really?
And after that, like
Yeah.
I'm not a person who's driven by fear, but like after I seen those 3 people die,
It's
I
not
was
worth
like,
it.
I'm just like, I'm good.
From
Yeah.
the
I'm
diving?
good. In Ohio,
I've heard about that.
Yeah, 3 people
There's
die a
multiple
year,
quarries in Ohio
usually.
that people have
Yeah.
died in.
Yeah.
Just going too deep.
Yep,
They
they go
can't
too
get back
deep
up.
and they get scared and they go up too fast and unfortunately they pass away because of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
And I seen the results of that and I was like,
Not worth it.
I'm good.
I'll
Like,
push you in, but I'm not.
Yeah, there's
gonna go
YouTube.
myself.
I'll push you.
yeah, I'll swim, but not.
You sign the waiver? Great.
Yep. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, the little thing,
Yeah.
but yeah. Who would
Sure.
know? In Ohio, people who die
Nice.
of
That's
scuba diving.
interesting.
I feel like you could get, although I don't think it's open anymore, but that there was a quarry in town. I think people dived. There was like a bus or something.
Yep, that's what they did.
Somebody-
at the quarry, they have a plane, a bus. They have statues. They have what else do they have in there? Something like a helicopter in there too. It was crazy.
Pyramid or something.
They drove them
Yeah,
in
right.
there, or somebody like
They sink them. They clean them all up and they sink them to the bottom. Yep.
really?
Yep.
For
Just
recycling?
no, just
The
What are they-
landfill
what
was
is it
full,
for?
bro.
Like they just put them there for
For
you could
entertainment.
dive in there. and
Yeah,
get-
it's because
get
people
stuck.
go in them, and people go in them. It just gives you something to do while you're down there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I need to reevaluate my version of fun. I don't think going 100 feet underwater to go through an old bus.
Yeah.
I could go to the landfill and go through an old bus.
You
Not
could.
not with the underwater and the scuba tank. And
Yeah.
You could probably just put
Not my-
goggles on
yeah.
and
Not my
fill
cup
them
of
up
tea.
with water.
Yeah.
This is what you have to do in Ohio when there's not
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
like
Yeah.
wildlife
Ohio,
down
yeah.
there to look
I
at. So
thought-
you have to have something to see, Logan.
I thought my version of fun was bad, but going to look at an old bus, thousands of feet underwater,
yeah. Yep.
a mile below the sea.
Yeah.
Thousands of feet.
exaggerating.
I don't know.
You don't
Hey,
know.
you listen, they're from around the world, so they come here from around the world. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start another
Only when
business.
they get lost.
Sinking stuff. I'm just gonna sink stuff in water and have people come look at it.
Okay.
But that's not actually the cause of all of your patients is just diving.
No.
No.
Nope. Eating bad and
Oh,
not
yeah.
working out and smoking.
I was gonna say smoking.
And stuff like that. That's usually the biggest causes. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
So yeah.
You're safe to dive, at least usually.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do it.
Just don't eat anymore.
Yeah. Just yeah. That's always the best answer. So. Just quit eating.
Just, I don't feel good. Just stop eating.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you're finishing up school here pretty quick. This internship is the last hurrah.
Yes, it's the last hurrah.
This has
So
been 4 years.
Yes.
10 years.
Well, 3.5 years.
16 years.
yeah, 3.5. It feels like 16, but
Three
no.
and a half.
3.5, yeah. So it's my last semester. I graduate in December, and yeah, so
Nice.
pretty excited about that.
Then back to the
Yeah.
diving shop, or
Yep, back to the quarry. It's fun while it lasted. But no, yeah. So I really don't know what's in the future, but yeah, I'm pretty excited to see where God leads me and pursue what I like to do. So I think cardiac rehab is definitely a field I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Definitely something to do with like exercise probably is
Sure.
in the future. So
yeah.
yeah.
So what's the degree?
My degree is exercise science or kinesiology. So yeah. So it definitely fits right along with what I want to
Yeah.
do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Boom.
Mhm.
Shakalakis. So you plan on sticking around, or are you kind of
Yeah.
trying not to?
You know what? I've kind of now. I don't want to say I've quit making plans because obviously that's not only as wise, but I've also learned that like I'll keep making plans and I'll keep walking forward. But that's the main thing. I'll just keep walking forward. I'm not gonna like. In the past, I've definitely struggled with like trying to make plans and then not working out and being like, well, what the heck, you know? So instead of having
Yeah.
that attitude, just being like, okay, God, I need you, but I need you, but I'm gonna also walk in faith and just keep walking forward. And I know that He'll open the doors that
Right.
He wants me to go through, and He'll shut the doors that
Right.
aren't supposed to be open. So that's how I kind of
Yeah.
view it. So at least,
Yeah.
yeah.
Boom.
So like if you stay, you stay. If you go, you go.
Yeah,
kinda
seriously, yeah.
mentality,
BG, I love BG.
Sure.
I feel like anywhere you can go, you
Right.
can make a difference anywhere.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you are. So,
Yeah.
but
Sweet.
So what's the process? I mean, are you looking for like job openings, or?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking for job openings. That world is such a small world. So my coworkers have been there for like 28 years, and no one
Really?
left. Yeah.
The exercise science world?
Yeah. Well,
Really?
no, the cardiac rehab world.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay,
The cardiac
gotcha,
rehab.
okay.
Exercise science world is a very broad world.
That's what I was gonna think. Yeah.
You can do. There's all kinds of stuff you
Mhm.
can do, which is really cool. But it's almost so much again that it kind of hinders you because it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Really?
So,
Yeah.
so you gotta kind of pick an avenue. Like that's what I'm doing right now. I picked the cardiac rehab avenue and walk with that till no more.
And
So,
now that's more of a smaller window. the
yeah,
cardiac-
that's a very small
Okay.
window. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
but yeah.
Yeah. So, did you got into the military right out of high school?
Yeah, I joined actually when I was 17. I had my parents sign a waiver for me to join.
Did you
Wow.
finish high school?
I did. Yeah. I finished high school. So really, I was like, okay, I want to be signed in, locked in. I want to get the job I want. And for that to happen, there was an opening that a job came down from the Air Force, and they said, hey, if you want this job, you got to sign now, which looking back is like whatever, but still, I was like, okay,
to get you in.
yeah, like get me in, it's like recruiting, but it was good. I think like looking back, it was, I had a very good process getting into the military. A lot of people have awful experiences. I had a great experience. I still talk to my recruiter even to this day. I don't hate him at all. I like him. So a lot of guys despise their recruiters. So,
Really?
Yeah. Just because sometimes they, if your job is to get people in the door, you'll sell out sometimes.
Sure.
So that's not everybody. I'm not trying to bash on everybody, but some people, the temptation is there. So he was truthful. He was very truthful. So anyways, with that though, I was like, Mom and Dad, like I want to sign, like I want to join now. So they had to sign a waiver for me to like start doing everything. So I was 17 technically when I joined.
Wow.
I couldn't leave till I was 18. But as soon as I turned 18, pretty much like right after I turned 18, for the most part, I left. So, yeah.
What was your mindset going into that? Like you're leaving home. Where did you report to first?
Yeah. So the process is like pretty simple. Like I came out of Lima, Ohio.
Okay.
That's where I signed, and literally it's kind of weird. It's almost simple. It's almost like too simple. It was almost like, wait, what? Like
Really?
That's it? Yeah. Because it was literally like you go to the recruiter's office, you sign paperwork, you go take a physical. And next thing you know, like you get a job, like, and then you find yourself like, hey, show up at an airport at this time. Here's your tickets. You're gonna fly down to San Antonio, Texas.
Wow.
And there's gonna be a place for you to go, and they tell you where to go, and you walk there, and you don't even see anybody in the Air Force or the military. You see nobody. It's all on you to get there. And that was like the first time I flew and everything when I was 18. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm going, like the first time I flew, I was going to San Antonio, Texas, and I was all by myself. And you can't be late, obviously.
Right.
So because they're gonna be like, hey, where you at?
Yeah.
And they'll find you. So anyways, so you get to the airport and you wait around till everybody gets there, because like you start seeing all these people like with all like oh, you joined the military? Like, oh yeah, I'm going to the Air Force. Oh, I'm going to the Air Force. So it's that strange. And then so you're all in this area, and then eventually a drill sergeant shows up, and he's like, all you guys are going to the Air Force, like check in with me. And then he gets you all in a line, and then you walk out to a bus, and that's when it's game over. But anyway,
you lose.
That's when your life changes. As you know your life, it completely changes. So put you on a bus, they send you to the base, they get you in processed, and then that's when it all craziness starts. So
down to business right away.
Down to business right away. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So So it was 8.5 week boot camp. And yeah,
was that pretty rigorous?
Yeah, the Air Force is everyone jokes about the Air Force being like the chair force, and it's all like, oh, like, and I wish it was more physical, because it was honestly more mental. Like every day it was just like just testing after test, like paper test, mental test, challenges. Like they really weren't concerned about if you're like gonna be able to like be a soldier. Like you're an airman, you're there to like be a technical person.
Sure.
Like you're there to be like work on things, and like it's not about you can kick down a door. It's about like can you work on a aircraft?
Can you problem solve really fast?
Can you problem solve? Yeah. So it's just a big every day's like a brain challenge. So
interesting.
Yep. So that's why I thought it was way more physical. Not at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
Huh. What was a job you wanted to get into?
So I, what they call a sensor operator. So my first job was, I had two jobs in the Air Force. They called a sensor operator. But I flew on a small intelligence aircraft, and it was my job to control the camera and talk on the radios. And it was a really cool job. And that's why I signed early, because I knew the opportunity to be to fly. And I wasn't a pilot, but I was a part of a crew that flew. I knew that was a very special thing as an enlisted person, because a lot of people have to do a lot of, like, they have to go to school first, they have to become a pilot to fly normally.
Just to get in the air.
Just to get in the air.
Yeah.
So I recognized, and I always wanted to fly too. I didn't want to be a pilot, but I knew I wanted to fly. So, so that's why I did that. So anyways, that's my first job. Interestingly, I was able to do that. I had like 180 hours doing that job, which doesn't sound like much, but when you fly, that's not a ton at all, but at the same time, it's more than like nothing. That job actually got shut down while I was still in training, though. So like I was never able to deploy down range to go do it, but I was able to do it in America, just not like
overseas or anything.
Yeah. So that was kind of a bummer when I first had, because I was so, like, my identity was like wrapped up in that for sure. Because I was like, oh, I'm a flyer. I'm like all cool, and all this kind of all stupid stuff. But anyways, but it was really cool. It was like it was special. I have a lot of good memories of doing it. But then when it shut down, I was like, what the heck? And they were even threatening to kick everyone out of the Air Force. Sorry, everyone out of who was doing that job in the Air Force. Sorry, they were like, because it was during a time where there wasn't a lot of money for the military. So they were like, what we're going to do with all these people looking at us, but we don't have jobs for them. In the military, they don't care about that kind of stuff. So they're like, it sounds bad, but it's like, no, like that's just how they operate.
Right.
It's not made. The military is not made to care about people, because it's just not that wouldn't be work. That wouldn't work in wartime. So, anyways, transfer. Looking back, I'm very thankful that happened though, because again, that happened while I was still in training, because that let me. But the fact that I was still in training said, hey, this guy is still young and he's still like malleable and like he can be used.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of the older guys, unfortunately, were kicked out because there was just no room for them. So anyways, so I was able to get my second job, which I did electrical engineering. So
really,
yeah,
wow,
yeah. So at first I was super mad because I don't work with. I'm not really like electrical type of guy or like an engineer type of guy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, God, what the heck? And then on top of that, I found out he was sending me to Las Vegas. And at the time, I'll also backtrack real quick. I was stationed in Texas, California, and Nevada in Las Vegas.
Oh wow, okay.
That was my where I was sent to. And I was so mad. I was like, I don't want to go to Las Vegas. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So you were in California at the time?
Yep. I was in Northern California, near Sacramento. So, and I loved it there. Yeah. And, so he took me away from that and sent me to Las Vegas. And at the time I had a really bad view of Las Vegas, like kind of obviously why, you know? And I was like, oh man, I'm like a young man. I don't want to deal with all this temptation. I don't want to deal with all this. I just want to I had a good church in California. I was in community. I was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go to this sin city where there's no church. There's nothing there. I'm going to be like just desolate and alone, that was a huge lie. But, so anyways, that was a huge lie. So, so through that though, I would move back to Las Vegas in a heartbeat because of how awesome, God is working there and how transparent, something that's really stuck out to me there is if you are going to church out there, it is not the norm. Like in the Midwest, a lot of people go to church. A lot of people just kind of go. Mm-hmm. There, you have to choose to go to church. You don't just go to church out there. That's just you don't just do that. So it was so cool to see once people got going and were saved, they were on fire and they really were hungry. And that was super cool to work with because it's everybody there was motivated to volunteer and I don't know the mission was clear, if that makes sense. To build the kingdom, it was just clear there. Whereas I feel sometimes in the Midwest that gets a little lost.
Just more of emotions, going through the motions.
Yeah, going through the motions. Our grandma went, so we go. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. There, it's my grandma never went. Heck, my grandma's doing drugs right now. So so anyways, so yeah, just to be real. So
sure.
Yeah. So then I got out of the military. I did 4 years, and I tried to go to UNLV, but the doors just weren't opening. I just tried, they weren't working with me. They were like, hey, do this and that. And just really slow. I had a limited amount of time because I was getting out. Yeah. And so I wanted to stay out there, but nothing was working. So it's kind of referencing what I said prior, God will close the doors. And he was closing that door. And I didn't like that, but it was that. So, but it was crazy because I called BG up and I found out that they were the top, they were in the top 25 in the nation for vets.
Okay.
Yeah, and they still are. They're still in the top 25. And I literally called them up. They're like, oh, yeah, do this, and that. And then, literally a week later, I was signed up for classes. I was enrolled. Wow. And I was all good to go. And I was still in Vegas. And it was just that simple. God just doom, 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 done. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, guess I'm going to Boulder. So, because I knew I wanted to go to college. That's why I joined the military primarily, though. I said to myself, even when I was 17, was I will get out. Even if I love the Air Force, I will get out after 4 years and go to school because I just know myself and I know that I wanted to get a degree. And I know that I needed to just get focused on that.
Yeah.
So
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
At that young of age.
I don't know
you're
why
like,
that was just in my mind.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, I will get out. Even though I love the Air Force, I want to be
Right.
the rest of my life, I will get out and go to school.
Sure.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's that. Yeah. So now I'm a senior at BG and the next transition phase. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. You ever cultivate some ideas of, I don't know, how you could kind of use this like creatively in terms of, I don't know, even like entrepreneurially, where you can kind of start some various things or.
Yeah. Like, you mean like this exercise?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, without going too much into detail, I've really thought about my experience at the cardiac rehab is opening up a clinic, not necessarily for like young people they could go, but like for elderly, but like have like a clinic for like elderly people, like not a rehab clinic, but like where they can like be monitored closely, and yet like not like be part of the medical system, and like to have like something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So a gym for the elderly.
Like a community place.
A community
to go,
place. I know they have community centers here, and I know that that's not. There's places like that, but there's really out of the research I've done, there's not a whole lot of places that are disconnected from a big medical system. Because the problem is what happens is when you want to do stuff with like the hospital, it's all through like your health insurance, and so like I want to be able to like, hey, like, can you afford like, you know, what can you afford? Let's have price ranges
Right.
and like
Right.
you know, like stuff like that. I haven't really thought about too much, but that's something that's popped in my head is like, hey, like, how can we help the elderly? And like, because I feel like we don't respect our elders very much anymore, and
Sure,
like
especially when they're
like
on the road.
society as a whole
Yeah.
kind of forgets about them. So how can we like help people out in like that kind of situation? So something like that. I don't know. That's kind of
Love
crossed my mind. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about you earlier, and I was just thinking about that concept of how, I mean, so you had this idea, right? I'm going to get into the military, and the military is going to pay for college.
Yes.
And then it's like, here's this plan of like, here's what I'm doing.
Yep.
But then sometimes you can get caught up in the, okay, well, now I'm just looking for a job instead of here's
Yeah.
this thing that's
Yeah.
inside of me.
Yeah.
How can I cultivate that and
Yeah.
turn that into something?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of like that seemed like that was a little more in line with
Yeah.
kind of what your track.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, though. You talked about entrepreneurship because I had a really good discussion with a lot of other veterans about how a lot of us really do think like that, though. And like, there's still to this day where like it's weird because we're under such a strict order, but yeah, a lot of us want to be free and like don't want to be a part of a big system anymore. Like we want to like be our own,
Yeah.
and like we know we have what it takes because like like it's scary, but at the same time like you realize that like it is all right. Being part of a big organization shows you that like how you can avoid some of the downfalls and like how you can use some of those experiences to like be
Right.
confident. And you know, at the end of the day, it still takes faith to be an entrepreneur, but like you can take your veteran experiences and like transform that and like push forward with that. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And you work with some veterans at school, right?
Yes, yeah. So I work in the military office at BGSU, and part of my job is to work with first semester veterans, because that's a hard time. Even when I looking back when I was first getting out, you're so used. Your identity is a lot of times wrapped up in being part of something bigger than yourself, like the Air Force. A lot of people view themselves as airmen or soldiers or Marines or Navy or and so a lot of guys, they walk into class and they find out that they're not 18 anymore, and that like they don't necessarily fit in, and that their views probably are a little bit different than the average college views, just to be real, So a lot of them really struggle because they're like, what the heck is going on? This is not the way it is, and I have to relate to somebody who's just graduated high school, and I have a family, or something like
Sure.
that, or stuff like that,
Mhm.
So the highest dropout rate or the highest risk of veterans dropping out takes place during the first semester. And so that's our main focus really, is working with first semester veterans and making sure that they stay like encouraged and that they can push. Because once they get past that first semester, the statistics is crazy high that they'll graduate. Because the goal is that they'll start learning and like gain perspective, and they're like, oh wait, like it's not about me fitting in, and it's not about me like doing this or that. It's about me going to class and getting done what I need to get done, and like who cares about? But it takes a while to learn that though.
Sure.
So,
New environment.
yeah, new environment. Yep.
A little uncomfortable.
Yep. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So tonight, I thought we'd talk a little bit about the kingdom of heaven and how it's desirable. In Matthew 13, Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven. And he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who was working in a field, and he uncovered this treasure. And so he buried it again, and in his joy, he went and sold all he had, and he bought that field. He said again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant, right? This business guy he's looking, he's searching, seeking for these pearls of great value. And once he found one, he went away, sold all he had, came back and bought it. I was just thinking about this idea about how sexy the kingdom is, right? Like, I mean, it's like, if you just look at those two pictures, they're both equated to value, right? That one's buried treasure and one's pearls, right? Both are very, right? Oh, I don't know what that treasure was, but anyways, both are very valuable in the monetary sense, and it's just interesting the picture, right? Because both went away. What they found was worth more than what they had. But by trading what they had, they could obtain what is kind of like there is no end to the value. Yeah, what do you guys think about that? About how in those kind of pictures, right, that the kingdom of heaven is like, no, that's legit. Once you see it, you're like, get whatever I got, let me have it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys think about that?
I'll jump in.
I can't think of anything.
just being honest, just being real.
I'll think of something.
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is it's not something that it's not an add-on. It's not a little something. Like, it becomes your everything. So it's worth trading. And if you think about it in your real life, all your comforts, all your, just if you sold everything to get it, then everything that you did have, it's like you count it all as a loss compared to what you're gaining. And so just that concept of that's what the kingdom of heaven is worth. It doesn't, anything else is incomparable.
Go ahead, Andrew. You gonna say something?
No.
Okay, I'll say something. No, I totally agree. I think it's too like I don't know. It's almost like having just this perspective like of like I don't know if everything was gone, like what would you still like I don't know, what would you give like the story is like, what would you give everything for? And sometimes it's like it's easy to be like I just think when you put your faith into something, like you truly put your faith into something, and you truly believe something, and like Jesus Christ is your God, and there's nothing then that's going to be like I don't know if that's worth it or not. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, what would you sell out for? Everything? Or if everything was gone, what would you I don't know, what would you like if you didn't have everything, what would you still like die for, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I don't know how to word it, but
like that difference between like what would you live for versus what would you die for?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, because there's a bunch of things, and you know, like I could name off a bunch of things that I would totally like give up a lot of stuff for, but there's probably like one thing that I would like that I would literally like die for, maybe two, maybe like family, you know, but like the kingdom of heaven, like that faith, that relationship, like the fact that like Christ is my God, that's non-negotiable. So what's I guess the kingdom of heaven is that non-negotiable thing. Everything else is usually pretty negotiable. But yeah, I like in the story, like that treasure, whatever, was non-negotiable. It's like I can negotiate all this other stuff, but this is non-negotiable. Yeah. So I guess that's what I thought.
Yeah. Kind of another thing too is when I hear that story, I think a key word that comes to my mind is perspective. So like that guy, like those people, they found perspective on like what they had. Sure. You know what I'm saying? So like I'm thinking even like in my life recently, I feel like even reading like Ecclesiastes, you know, it's like it's easy to value. Like if you gain perspective on that, like they gain perspective. So like they now had the realization that like everything else, like of course that's going to be the most valuable thing, because now they see that like, well, they're not even losing anything by selling out, because they realize that there's that whatever they're losing, quote unquote, is all worthless and meaningless, and it's all vanity and all that, you know. It's all like, I'm not losing anything. I gained the only thing that really matters, you know, it's kind of thing. So
yeah, because if you sold all you had to get the treasure or the pearl, then that treasure or pearl is worth more than what you bought it for. Yeah, the value in it far exceeds what you once had. So there's this story in, I think it's in John 9. And Jesus is walking down the road, and there's this man who's blind, and this guy was born blind. And Jesus spits in the dirt, makes some mud, puts it on his eyes, tell him to go wash in a pool. And when he does that, on his way back, he can see. This guy starts freaking out, right? I mean, dude, born blind, can see, right? People are seeing him. He's like leaping around, jumping. The people are like, is that the guy who was like always begging? It's like, you know, somebody else like, nah, that guy just looks like him. And he's like, no, that was me. And these guys end up taking him to the Pharisees. And this just so happened to be on a Sabbath. And so the Pharisees are like, nah, there's no way. We don't believe this guy. There's no way you were born blind. There's no way you were blind. This is just a story. And, you know, so they have him come in, and he kind of gives a spiel, and they still didn't believe him, right? Because they're like, there's no way Jesus is from God because he's working on a Sabbath, right? They just cannot get beyond like these rules. And so they end up calling his parents in, and they're like, is this your son? So yeah, was he born blind? Yes. How can he see? I don't know. Right? They're freaked out because the Pharisees had kind of given I don't know, kind of a warning or threat. Really, it's like anybody who kind of believes in Jesus will be kicked out of the synagogue. So they were scared. So they were like, well, you know, he's our son. He was blind. He's not blind now. We don't know, but he's of age. So you ask him, right? They're just kind of like scared of these religious leaders. And it's interesting. So then they call this guy back in. Hilarious, man. They start, again, they're just asking him the same questions. Like, who is this guy? How did he do it? He's like, why? I already told you. He's like, why do you want to hear it again? He's like, do you want to be his disciple too? It's like, and so at that point they freak out, you know, curse him and whatever. And, you know, they're like, you know, we believe in Moses and this and that. And this guy, he's just like, he's like, well, let's see if I think I got it here. Yeah. He says, he's like, well, now that's remarkable. It says, you don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. I was just thinking about this idea, right, of like standing before these religious leaders who are kind of opposing him, right? And there's such opposition. His parents are scared and timid because they don't want to get kicked out. So they're just like, whatever, bro, you got yourself into this, you get yourself out, right? But I was thinking about this idea of this opposition where this guy's not scared because he's more like annoyed. He's like, you guys are freaking morons. He's like, how is it possible that this guy could heal me if he weren't from God? And, it wasn't a matter of being scared at some point. It's just a matter of being super like dumbfounded. It's like, he's like, now that's remarkable, right? Sarcasm. So anyways, after that, they throw him out. And Jesus finds him after that. And he says, do you believe in the Son of Man? Here's this guy's response. This guy, right, who just got healed, who can see, he know Jesus healed him. Jesus says, do you believe in the Son of Man? He says, sir, tell me who he is so that I may believe in him. And Jesus is like, you have seen him. In fact, he's the one speaking to you now. And the guy's like, I believe, and starts worshiping him. But I was just thinking about this, right? Like this guy experienced, right, the kingdom. He found that treasure. Jesus was like, do you believe in the Son of Man? He's like, point me in the right direction. Whatever you say, wherever he is, I'm all in, right? Jesus is like, no, bro, it's me. He's like, done, right? It's just like hopping in that hard. He's so sold because of what he experienced. I was just like, man, that's the kingdom, man. That's the desirable kingdom where it's like it turns a malfunction into function. And in that function, you just finally, literally, this guy who could not see could see. And it's nuts, man. And further down in John 9, he says, I came to make those who are blind to be able to see, and those who claim they can see to prove that they're blind, right? Like these Pharisees. But yeah, what do you guys think about that story? That tenacity, that experience.
I was thinking about how, people in the world can say or can see something that looks different in somebody who truly is sold out for God and who is truly a light for him. And so I was thinking about that concept of you don't even know what you're seeing, but you see something and it's desirable. You hear those stories of people as like, I witnessed this person or I was around this person and there was just something different about him. There's something that was, and that's Jesus shining through them. And so just that concept that, he didn't even know what it was, but he's like, point me in the right direction. But he didn't know that was right in front of him, so that it's interesting that he was sold out, but didn't totally even understand it yet. But it was so appealing that it's like, well, you just explain it to me and now I'm in. Don't even need an explanation, just to point me in the direction. Yeah. And so, just that concept that when you truly are displaying the kingdom in the way you live, in the way you treat people, in the way that light is really shining through you, then it is so appealing.
What do you guys think? Got one?
Yeah, totally.
Totally, not so much.
Everything that Carolyn just said.
Verbatim. just rewind.
I just want to reiterate.
Just rewind that. Yeah.
I guess I'd heard that story probably through sermons and stuff, just about the mud in the eyes, but the second part though is interesting. I don't think I've heard that as much, where talks about the guy going to the religious leaders and he's kind of like, like you said, he's dumbfounded, but he stands up for like what happened. Cause I think he could have easily been convinced, like with all the emotional stuff and all the like, okay, I can see now, holy smokes. And those people that had a bunch of power back then, especially in the church and government, they could have probably easily convinced him like, no, this is what happened. Like, it wasn't because the mud was in your eyes and Jesus told you to go wash in this puddle. It was, it was this, or it was because of this. And it could have easily been, especially like if you think about going to like people in power and politics and government, it could be easy to get caught up in like, okay, I'm in the presence of somebody who's got a lot of power. especially after a personal, emotional, heavy experience, and just be caught up in all this stuff and just been convinced otherwise. But he was pretty firm, and he was clear, and he was stern. And it's like, no, this is what happened. And then because then they couldn't give an answer for him, so he's like, I need to know. Yeah, the answer became the most important thing to him. Like, why did this happen, and how do I hold on to this? And yeah, so just interesting, really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Real quick, I think kind of tack on to what you were saying, like
verbatim. Yeah.
verbatim.
Verbatim. Yeah, just rewind it.
Yeah. Just rewind it. Yeah. But no, like, I think it's interesting too, like we were saying, like just how close the people were to him who were persecuting him. I mean, these are people he saw or that saw him every day, and they're still like, so why do we expect people around us, even our family members and stuff, like, why do we, like, if we know the truth, it's kind of like we got to really, it's very convicting, because it's like, how often do I know the truth and I want to live it out, but like, will I let a simple opinion of like a family member or somebody like deter that, when really there's just no room for that? It's just, he's like, listen, the truth is the truth. It is the way it is. This is the, and that's how we should live, I think, But yet so often we kind of like, we fall into like the opposite side of the story, where we would be like, or at least I sometimes would be like, oh yeah, I don't know. Like the Pharisee would question, I don't know if I could stand up to him.
Did this really happen?
Yeah. But like, obviously the answer is there. So
yeah.
I think, it's like, because it comes down to, right, like that experience and that understanding and that like knowledge and that connection. To then it's like somebody says something so absurd like that, he's not from God. Well, I mean, when's the last time you healed somebody born blind, buddy?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're so righteous, bring it.
And that's how you know it's true, because it's like, you wouldn't make that up. Like, you know what I'm saying by that? Like, that's just not logical. Why would he come to the Pharisee, or why would he like say that? Like, oh yeah, put my eyes, washed it, and I'm healed. Like, no one would say that in their right mind. And that's how I can also perceive it as like, there's a lot of truth in that statement, I don't know, does that make sense? Or
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So just even kind of in the same lines of that treasure, right? Being so valuable that you would trade it all because its worth is greater than what you could buy it for ish, right? Like, this metaphorically speaking. But I was thinking about in John 7, Jesus talks about, let anyone who's thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as scriptures had said, rivers of living water will flow from within them. And I was just thinking about this idea of the river, right? And he's talking about the Holy Spirit. And this idea of the river. Because this idea of the river, man, it's better than sometimes what people talk about. Sometimes, people talk about, well, I gotta get filled up so I can get poured out. And it's just like, if you gotta get filled up, that means you didn't have anything. And if you gotta get poured out, that means you end up with nothing. So it's just like, there's a different picture in the Bible. And it's this river, right? That's sourced from in you. And I was thinking about this river, and we were talking about this, but, if you've ever seen like some of that extreme kayaking, like Red Bull does some like kayaking, and you get these guys, man, kayaking in these little tiny boats. They got the skirts on, right? Where it's like, it's called a skirt, but it's like, I don't know. It's this thing that hooks onto the boat and hooks onto your waist. Anyways, and they're like, just this tiny little, and some of these rivers, man, they're just like this little speck in just this monster of like flow of water raging down the mountain. And it is just nuts. I mean, these guys are going down like 60-foot waterfalls, like ridiculous. But anyways, but it's like you in some of these rivers, right? Especially you're talking about in the mountains, right? You get in the springtime, you get all the snow melt from the mountains, and then you get the rainfall, and everything's getting funneled into this river. Well, this river, right? It seemingly has like no end to water volume, and it's just has so much force and momentum that it's just like there's nothing you could do to stop it. I mean, if you're in it, you better know how to paddle. Otherwise, it's so strong. There's nothing, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There's just like if you've ever been in like in an ocean or something, the waves are gnarly. It's just like there's nothing you can do to like stop it. And I was just thinking about this concept of the river, right? Like it's sourced on the inside, like meaning it has no end. It talks about like the springs of living water that well up or bubble up to eternity, right? Like talk about like a well where there'd be like a body of water underneath the earth that you drill down to, and there's so much pressure that then it springs up, and it doesn't stop, right? There is no getting filled up to getting poured out. There's only the flow. And I was just thinking about this idea of how it's like in the kingdom, it's not so much of like this fear of I'm going to give, but if I give too much, I'm going to burn out, or I'm going to get tired, or I'm going to give so much that I have nothing left. There's just kind of like always this kind of like there like a limitation or a restriction, or there's another word I'm looking for, but shortage. Like there's a shortage, right, to the amount of love you could express. There's there's this false idea that there's a shortage of
you have like a finite amount.
Yeah. In like your ability to forgive, or your ability to love, your ability to produce new ideas, come up with new solutions. There's no shortage to your ability to get up after you fall down, to stand up and throw down. There's no shortage to what you can do. And it's like, in fact, the more you let that river flow from you, the more output of flow can come through you. Like if you picture like a garden hose, right, it being like, let's just call it 3/4 of an inch of a hole. The more you let the water come out, in this instance, the bigger your hole gets. So the more and more you use it, the diameter of your hose grows to 1 inch, to 2 inch, to 3 inch, to 4 inch, right? Where, you become like a fire hydrant. Like the more that comes out, the more you use it, the greater your capacity. The more you give, the more you increase your ability to give. There is no shortage in this river that is sourced from the inside that wells up to eternity, which by nature means it has no end and it has no beginning. It just is and will never stop. And it's just like, I don't know, man, that's the thing in the kingdom that's like sexy. That's the thing that has so much more than maybe once had. It's like, this is the thing, man, where it's like you cultivate the mind of Christ, where you're not limited in your thoughts. You're not limited in what you can know. I mean, I went and spoke at my daughter's first grade class, and I was just thinking about how like there's no limit to what you can learn. There's no limit to what you can understand. A lot of people will talk about how like, it's just, God's infinite and we're finite. And we could never really know him, and you kind of use that as like a justification for ignorance. But it's like, if you just change your perspective just slightly, it's just like, no, there's like no end to what you could experience. There's no end to what you could learn. There's no end to what you could understand. There just is no end, because it's just that good. And it's like, that's a totally different perspective. It's a small jump with massive ramifications. What do you guys think about that? About some river action. If Kyle were here, he'd be talking about river cream right about now.
Oh my gosh. Some river suds. Yeah. I was just thinking about the analogy of the faucet. But yeah, it was a great analogy. So you're kind of saying, like, if you only have like a 3/4 inch coming in, you can't have a 10-foot. It's not going to be a 10-foot stream, or like a 10-foot stream coming out. Like if you want to have a 10-foot wide stream coming out, you got to have a 10-foot wide stream coming in. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Okay, I definitely missed it.
No, there's an unlimited source in you. So
Okay,
so
sure.
the more you let it flow, the bigger outflow you have. So the more you let it well up and come
Okay,
out, the
okay.
more you use it,
So there's
the
a-
bigger your capacity to unleash it.
There's enough for as wide as you want it to be.
Yeah.
But if you only allow it to go through a 3/4 inch, that's all it's going to go.
Sure. But I'm just saying it expands. There's no end.
Right,
You're not
okay.
limited in your energy. You're not limited in your solutions and the problems you can solve. You're just there is no limit.
Sure.
And the more you get into it, the more you find is there.
Okay, that clears that up. I totally had it wrong. But yeah, okay, I really like that one too.
Okay. No, you got connected to the source.
Yeah. I think I just Well, after being completely wrong, I'm just gonna try to think about something
Just
to go
try
with
again.
that.
Just try again.
Well-
There's no limit to tries here.
Right. Yeah. How much time do we have?
A couple hours.
Okay. Yeah, I think I used to live in like a state of lack, like the state of I need to ask for. If I want something, I need to ask for more of it. And not to say like I guess the things that like I don't know, maybe that's not a good example, but just this state of lack where it's like I don't have enough and I got to find more so before I can have enough to give more. Yeah, and the just the mindset that's like maybe maybe the talents that I have aren't good enough, or maybe I just am in general not good enough. So I don't know, I guess thinking about like that spring, that river being like just so much more than just like I don't know, more than just like what can I give in the offering box. It's like what, like my talents and the way that you can just help people and be around people and how you think and how you talk and act and all that stuff is just like that there's unlimited good that to do all that. And there's no excuse to be like, I just didn't have enough in me, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with you. I used to believe the lie, like a lie that I believed was like, God, like, okay, I'll serve you this, and then I'll just I'll stop so I can recharge to serve you again, like stuff like that, like what it's, but like there's such a little twist in there that I like thought so much, like, I'll serve you again if I'm rested up, but I'm stopping to serve, and like what the heck, like. Because it doesn't make sense, because I believe you're right. Like there's a huge river, and I was like, I need to shut the river off and dam it up to let my to restore. It's like no, like
no, it's all just
like
a
the river
perspective.
technically is kind of like what a dam does. It creates energy, So like that's why. Sorry, my mind went there. I was like, anyways, but
No, my mind went there.
yeah, like. Yeah, and so like you just got to realize what's going on, and once you, again, what you said, have perspective and everything on that, it's like, oh my gosh, like no, keep going, and if you trust in Him and have the faith, He'll provide for you. If you're concerned about, also for me too, it was like, well, I have to go to work, or I have to do this or that, or I have to like, clean or do something, and like there's times for that kind of stuff in life, like to do everyday life, but like again, like no, I don't have time not to do it, because that stuff's all whatever, but like with the river flowing, you're good to go. He'll take care of you. And so sorry, I don't know how to word that.
No, you can't, like, there's external things that like people will justify, restrict that, but it's like everything is in your control to determine how much output. I think if I'm getting that right, there's everything's in your control to determine how much output there is. There's nothing that's out of your control that will restrict that, like your external environment.
I get you on that. Like, sorry, like there's nothing big enough to
you determine how much you want to give out.
Yeah, like to restrain you on that. Because if you truly are walking and building the kingdom, what in the world could stop that river flowing? Like, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah, well, it's the idea, where I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but like capacity, right? People think, okay, well, I'm at capacity.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, some of that just has to do with like the way we think.
Yeah.
And kind of getting real involved in our emotions, the negativity, and
Yeah.
then we create these perspectives and these
Yeah.
conclusions that kind of where we think we're limited, but we're not.
Yeah.
But it's like the way you increase your capacity is one, you change the way you think, but two, man, you get into some new things. Because sometimes your capacity, quote unquote, gets low, kind of because you're bored. You're dealing with the same problems. What you need is some new freaking problems. That's what you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some new. Well, because look, you get sucked into a pattern. All of us, right?
Yep.
And when you keep doing the same things, you keep getting the same results. So when you notice that it's like you want these new results, but you keep getting the same old results, it's because you haven't done anything new. And so it's like when you get sucked into a pattern of just kind of doing the same thing and going through the emotions. I'm going to work. I'm taking care of my kids. We're going to bed. I'm trying to read. It's just like, oh my gosh, the motion in the ocean.
Yeah.
No, it's like you kind of lose sight of that vigor of what life is about, a purpose, right? There's a bigger meaning to just going to work, just raising your kids, doing this stuff. No, man, there's purpose. And that purpose is the deal. It's kind of like what you were talking about, even just like the mundane things like the doing the dishes and doing this and that. It's just like, dude, look, we live on purpose. So everything we do, raising our kids, living in a house, and working with people, I mean, we do it on purpose. Like my life, it's like it's not sectioned out. People get into like these weird priorities. Okay, God's number one, and then it's my family, and then it's my work, and then it's church. And it's just like, I don't know why you would separate all that when it's like God's inside of me, and then everything I do, God's in me. So everything I do is on purpose, and it's in the kingdom, right? My family's in that. We work on purpose. These ideas, we try to bring it to reality. All those things are on purpose. It's all just part of life. It's not like this weird separation.
Yeah.
It's just a continual.
Yeah, like why would we like have a time for the Spirit to flow, and then we stop the Spirit flow? Like, okay, time to go home, take care of the kids. So let's like, all right, we start talking about like the Holy Spirit, like working in us. Like, why would we be like, okay, that's enough working, Holy Spirit. I'm gonna
time card.
Okay, I checked out. I served at church today, so my 2 hours is up. Like, the tithe is counted. Let's go home.
Right.
Like
so true though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So probably on a closing thought, I had this. We're trying to get in. We had this idea, and we approached somebody about this idea, kind of creating some a program, and ended up talking to the people, and the people were like, "Man, this was like what you're talking about. This is like an answer to prayer," and and we, essentially we kind of want to go with that. And I was just thinking about this concept as I was walking out the door, right? I mean, I had an idea, right? I saw something, and we've got this, we got this desire. We got to be transformed into something. We got to get into the world. We got to take action, and we got to bring our message to people, which involves us, essentially selling that idea and then doing it. And anyway, so we approached somebody, and somebody's like, "Bro, that's like an answer to prayer." And I was just thinking, right, this idea I had, right, which whatever, it's all wrapped up in purpose and in vision, but it's like this idea that was sitting inside of us, right, was literally the answer to somebody else's prayer. In the sense, like, these ideas that we think, man, like that flow from the power of this river and the Spirit, right, in the mind of Christ, these ideas that we think, it's like they're solutions to problems. But what's interesting is like these problems, like people literally have the problem that you have the solution for. Like there are people who are praying and crying out to God, be like, "I got this problem." And God's like, no, I got the solution. It's just wrapped up in you. Yeah. It's wrapped up in me. It's wrapped up, right? It's just like, people are waiting for us to arise and shine. People are waiting for us to tap into these ideas and these dreams and to realize them. Like the world is dying, waiting for us to show up. And I'm not saying people aren't showing up and we're not doing anything. I'm just saying like there's these ideas that we cultivate are literally the answer to somebody else's prayer. And it's like, you could be surprised at who you could find and run into who would need the solution that's like marinating inside of your guts. So to that end, man, let the river flow. It says in the article, right? It says the power of God in you, right? Like, you don't want to use this thing sparingly. It's like you want to make every attempt to run this thing dry. The more you let the river flow, the more you increase your outflow. The more you give increases the volume you can give. The more you make demands on your potential and creativity, the greater your capacity. The more you use what you have, the more you have to use. There is no end to this river that is sourced inside of you, because it is by nature eternal and therefore without end. So my good peoples, as long as it's called a day, let that river flow. Until next time, peace! Guys, thanks so much for sticking around. If you're new to Be Transformed, make sure you subscribe and then hit us up at teambetransformed.com, where you can find everything you need to live a life that says all day, I keep it cultivated. If you're not sure what that is, make sure you check out the video and then join the movement. Until next time.